Bruce Lee's body was sending warnings, nobody listened. What if Bruce Lee's body had already warned everyone that something was seriously wrong, and nobody recognized the warning? On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee was only 32 years old. He was at the height of his fame, physically extraordinary, and preparing for the next chapter of his career. That evening, he complained of a headache. He took a pain medication, he went to lie down, and he never woke up. The official medical finding was cerebral edema, severe swelling of the brain. But here is the part that makes his death so difficult to understand. Bruce Lee had already experienced a frightening episode of brain swelling weeks earlier. He survived it. He returned to work. He continued training. And then it happened again. Only this time, there would be no second chance. So was his body trying to tell him something? And if it was, what did everyone miss for more than 5 decades? Bruce Lee's death has generated theories ranging from a reaction to medication to heatstroke, and more recently, a possible fatal disturbance in the body's water and sodium balance. But separating fact from speculation is important. We know what doctors found, we know what happened on the day he died, and we know about an earlier medical emergency that occurred roughly 10 weeks before his death. The mystery is what connected those events, because the most revealing clue may not be found in the final hours of Bruce Lee's life. It may be hidden in the weeks before them. By 1973, Bruce Lee had become something almost unprecedented. He wasn't simply an actor. He had become a symbol of speed, discipline, physical perfection, and martial arts innovation. His films had transformed his career in Hong Kong, while Enter the Dragon was about to introduce him to an enormous American audience. To the public, he looked almost indestructible, but appearance can be deceptive. A person can be extraordinarily fit and still suffer from a medical problem that has nothing to do with physical strength. And Bruce Lee was about to provide one of the most dramatic examples of that reality. On May 10, 1973, Bruce Lee was working at a dubbing studio in Hong Kong while preparing dialogue for Enter the Dragon. The room became extremely hot after the air conditioning was turned off to prevent noise from interfering with the recording. After some time, Lee became seriously unwell. He fainted and began convulsing. He was rushed to the hospital. Doctors found severe cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, and treated him. He survived. And that moment should have changed the story forever. Because brain swelling is not an ordinary sign of exhaustion. It is a medical emergency. Yet Bruce Lee recovered enough to return to his work, and from the outside, the crisis appeared to have passed. But was it really over? After recovering, Lee returned to the world he knew. Film sets, training, meetings, choreography, work. The public saw Bruce Lee doing what Bruce Lee always did, moving forward. That may have been one of the most important details of all. Because when someone survives a terrifying medical episode and then appears healthy again, people naturally want to believe the danger has disappeared, but the first episode remained part of his medical history. And roughly 10 weeks later, another crisis would begin. This time, there would be no hospital recovery. The morning of July 20th, 1973, did not begin like the final day of a legend. Bruce Lee was still working. He was involved in plans surrounding Game of Death and met with Australian actor George Lazenby about a possible role. Later, Lee went to the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei. Producer Raymond Chow was also involved in plans for the evening. Then Lee complained of a headache. Betty gave him Equagesic, a prescription pain medication containing aspirin and meprobamate. Lee went to lie down. Later, when he could not be awakened, medical help was called. He was taken to the hospital. Doctors attempted to save him. But Bruce Lee was pronounced dead that night. He was 32. And once again, the medical findings centered on cerebral edema, the same devastating condition that had nearly killed him weeks earlier. Naturally, investigators looked closely at the medication. At the time, the conclusion focused on a possible adverse reaction to Aquagesic. But the explanation did not end the debate. Why? Because Lee had reportedly taken the medication before. And the evidence did not provide a simple answer that satisfied everyone. The medical finding was clear: his brain had swollen severely. The mystery was what triggered that swelling. Was it the medication? Was it something connected to heat? Was another physiological problem developing? Or was the first medical emergency itself a warning that had been misunderstood? Those questions would remain for decades. Years later, another explanation gained attention. One theory proposed that Lee's first collapse may have been related to heat stroke. That theory connected several pieces of the story. He had undergone surgery to remove sweat glands from his armpits. He trained intensely. He worked in hot environments. And his first major medical emergency occurred inside an unusually hot dubbing room. Heat stroke can cause serious neurological damage, including cerebral edema. But this remains a theory about the cause of his death, not a universally established conclusion. And another theory would later challenge the entire way people understood the final hours. In 2022, kidney specialists published a paper proposing a different possibility: hyponatremia. In simple terms, severe hyponatremia means the sodium concentration in the blood becomes dangerously low, often when the body contains too much water relative to sodium. Why did researchers consider this possibility? They pointed to several reported factors in Lee's final period, including high fluid intake, exercise, certain medications, and other possible influences on the body's ability to regulate water. Their hypothesis was that an inability to excrete enough water could have produced severe hyponatremia. That, in turn, can cause brain cells to swell. And suddenly, the earlier medical mystery looked different. The question was no longer simply, what happened on July 20? It became, could something have been going wrong inside Bruce Lee's body long before that final night? And this may be the most important lesson hidden inside Bruce Lee's story. There is no universally proven answer explaining exactly what triggered his fatal cerebral edema. The evidence tells us that Bruce Lee died from severe brain swelling. It tells us that he had experienced a similar medical emergency weeks earlier. And it tells us that several competing explanations have been proposed since his death. But none of those theories should be presented as proven fact. The real mystery is the pattern. A 32-year-old man who appeared extraordinarily healthy suffered one serious neurological crisis. He recovered. He went back to work. And roughly 10 weeks later, he experienced another catastrophic episode. The first event may have been a warning, but nobody at the time knew exactly what it meant. And by the time the second warning arrived, there was no time left to decode it. Bruce Lee spent his life teaching people that strength was not simply about muscles. It was about awareness, adaptability, understanding the body. And perhaps the most haunting part of his story is that even someone who had devoted his entire life to mastering his body could not necessarily recognize what was happening inside it. his death remains surrounded by unanswered questions. But one fact stands above the theories: Bruce Lee was not invincible. He was human. And sometimes, the most dangerous warnings are not dramatic. They can begin with something as ordinary as a headache. Then, before anyone understands what is happening, everything can change. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story interesting, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who wants to know the untold side of Bruce Lee's story.